What's going on, everybody? So today let's talk a little bit about what I look for in a particular property when I'm looking for a brand new property, either in a new state I've never been to or same state that I've been hunting. I'm just trying to expand my horizons, maybe look for some bigger deer, some different deer to hunt, and just keep adding to the inventory of properties that I know and I'm familiar with. So I got 5 key things that I look for. One's access. Next is food. Next is cover. You've got edges, and you've got difficulty of hunting. And really the difficulty of hunting kind of goes hand in hand with access, but that's a big one I'm looking for when it comes to terrain, possible water, different things like that. So we'll get into that in a second. So let's cover edges first. Deer are very edgy deer. They love working edges, and the more edges you have on a property, typically the more deer you're going to have on the property, and especially the more patternable and predictable that deer movement is going to be. So if I'm looking for an out-of-state hunt, I don't have a lot of time to hunt it. I don't have time to really put into a big woods property or a real swampy, marshy property. I just don't have the time to put into it that I would like to have. So I need to make it more of a quick hunt, and the more edges I have, the better that's going to be with keeping that hunt a little bit faster and more predictable. On the flip side of things, also, that attracts a lot of hunting pressure, so that's something to keep in mind. There's a balance to that, and you got to be careful with. So food and cover, what am I looking at on my maps? What to expect when I get to property? Is it going to be primarily an agriculture kind of property? Is it surrounded with only pasture and you got some oaks that you're going to be looking for in the woods? Is it primarily a big woods property with distant crop fields, like they're not butted up against the property, they're not on property? What am I expecting to look for when I get on property to kind of speed up my scouting? And I'm going to make waypoints, obviously, through my online scouting, and that's something I suggest everybody do. It really speeds up and streamlines your scouting efforts on property. That way you can just go right to the locations of interest, and then you put boots on the ground and find out exactly what that looks like, what the deer movement looks like. Not every location I mark is going to be a win, and that's just going to be part of it. Finding where not to hunt is just as important as finding where to hunt. So I always look for masked trees no matter where I'm going, whether it's in main agriculture property or not. I'm still looking for main masked trees. But if I do have agriculture fields, I want to kind of center my efforts around the agriculture field that's being used predominantly. So if it's a little bit earlier in the season, those deer love to stay on soybeans until they get picked, and then they'll move over to corn. And then they'll be hitting the corn and the beans, obviously, throughout the season. And once those fields get picked, they're going to be off the edges a little bit further into the ridges. And that's just something to keep in mind. If you've got an unpicked cornfield, I would be more comfortable hunting a little closer to the edge and hunting some oak trees along the edge, because those deer have a ton of cover with the corn still standing, cover in the woods, and you got a main oak tree right there on the edge. A lot of times you can find a scrape there. Even if you can do that, that'd be a fun hunt. That'd be a really fun hunt. Soybean early season, it's a fantastic draw for those deer. And find yourself, some masked trees off the edge of that. Early season also, you can get into some persimmons, and you can get into some of those soft masked trees going into October also. They still produce through that middle of October. So kind of keep an open mind about what you're going to look at on property. But at least when I look on the online maps, I kind of have an idea of what to expect going to property. And then when it comes to cover, same thing. Am I looking at a lot of CRP fields? Does it look like there's a lot of fields with that, 6 to 10 foot brush that you just can't hunt and you can barely walk through? Or is it predominantly big mature trees, hardwood trees? And that will kind of determine on how I expect these deer to be bedding. Will they be bedding in kind of on those benches in the big hardwoods, eating the acorns? Are they gonna stay on the edges of those CRP fields, or kind of in and amongst those really thick, nasty fields, that grown-up fields that you just can't get into? I need to, going into it, I'm gonna know exactly what those look like, and then I'm gonna work the edges of them and just figure out what's fresh and what to kind of focus on. When it comes to access, things have changed just a little bit here lately. People are very mobile. Public land hunters are getting to places that we haven't seen them get to in the past, where I would have a location all to myself. I mean, for years, year after year after year, I'd be by myself in this particular location. And then all of a sudden now I've got hunting pressure back there getting to it. Tree stands are light, climbing sticks are light. Everybody's saddle hunting that nowadays, and being mobile is more understood and welcome now, which is awesome. People, everybody's getting out there and haven't seen the success by being mobile, and it's a lot of fun. It's a fun way to hunt, very successful way to hunt. But that does mean on the same time that we now need to be creative. So that spot that's the farthest from any road, any parking lot, isn't necessarily the best place to hunt anymore. Now everybody's going to that spot. So we need to keep an open mind and find those spots that are overlooked, the spots people are walking past, and just find these deer know where they're safe, and they're gonna be there, whether it's 100 yards from a parking lot or it's 3 miles from a parking lot. You just gotta find where they're comfortable. The thing though, that is, if the property is very easily accessible, there's a lot of trails and roads running through it, you can bet that property is going to be hunted hard. And more than likely they're going to be, if you can access anything within a mile, it's just going to be a little bit difficult to find those mature bucks staying on property, because it's going to be easier to be pushed off of property due to that. You're not walking very far anymore, and it's not very difficult. But let's go down to difficulty of hunting, my main focus here, because that also is something that will make access different. So either water or terrain. Terrain, let's talk about that one first. You could have a spot that's an absolute dynamite killer spot that's half mile from the truck, but it is an absolute bear to get to. It is steep. There's spots of it that are thick. You have to walk around a little bit, and it's just an absolute bear to get to. Those spots those deer are going to be in, even though the property itself is getting hunted fairly hard, the hunting pressure is going to be around that spot, not in that spot. So that's where if you're savvy enough, you can get into some of those locations, and you're not afraid of tackling an access that's going to be a bit of a bear, then you could have a little honey hole hidden for you that a mature buck's holding up in that nobody else is seeing. So that's something to keep in mind. Distance isn't always the key, it's difficulty of that distance. And also, if the entire property is extremely steep and ridgy, or it's a river bottom property and it's just super thick and nasty, it's going to kind of deter some people, and it's going to also keep folks from walking the entire property. That's the key that I've been finding here recently, is that a lot of these properties that have been amazing producers for mature bucks that we've had, they're also easier to walk. They're easier to access and get everywhere. So hunters are getting everywhere, and they're pushing deer around, pushing them off of property completely. If the property is more difficult to hunt, these deer have places to stay on property where they still feel safe. They can escape and, you know, down these gullies and across, just jump over a ridge and they're gone. Or boom, they're into a CRP field or a really overgrown area and boom, they're gone. Spots out like that, the deer are gonna stay. Even though they're getting hunted, they're able to escape and be safe. And that's a big thing I look for, is the difficulty of hunt. And when it comes to water access, again, a lot of people are canoeing, kayaking, and using boats to get to hard to reach spots because that's typically where the deer are going to be, because it deters a lot of the walking traffic. That does help. If you can access by water and cross water, that's fantastic. And a lot of times it does, you will limit the number of people that you are seeing. And I've seen big success by hunting water. The key there though is that I do prefer accessing by paddle. I have noticed that I will see a lot of deer that other people will not see just because I'm accessing it extremely quietly. In my personal opinion, I think the deer know the sound of the boat, and they will say the same thing with us walking a ridge and making a bunch of noise. That boat makes a bunch of noise, and I think the deer will just avoid that particular area for the day, and they might not be far away and you may be in a perfect spot, but because you made a bunch of noise with your boat getting in and out, they're just going to avoid that spot, and you're not going to end up seeing that deer. So the biggest thing right there that I look for is I look for difficulty of the hunt. Difficulty of the hunt. I also want a property, like I said, with edges. Edges make it easy to hunt. Honestly, they're very patternable and predictable, and you can expect to see a bunch of deer and have a good hunt, especially if you're going out of state and you don't have a ton of time to spend. Edges are fantastic. Make sure you have plenty of food and plenty of cover on property, or the deer just won't be there. If you don't have food and you don't have cover, don't even mess with it, because the deer aren't going to be there no matter how hard you hunt it. And access, just keep an open mind. Not walking the furthest isn't necessarily the way to go anymore. So that used to be the way to go. Now everybody does it. So now we got to be more creative and find those overlooked spots. So I hope that helped you guys maybe get an idea of what I do, what I think about going into finding a new property to hunt. I check off a lot of properties not to hunt, a lot more than I do properties to hunt. And that's just as important. I have a lot more time to scout than I have time to hunt. So I want to be very precise and smart with my time spent hunting. And that means picking properties that are going to fit the type of hunting I'm looking to do in my time frame to do it. So thanks for watching, y'all. Please hit that like and subscribe button if you liked the video, and I will see you on the next video.